It was already deep in the night, and the alleys of the old street were so quiet that they could only hear the sound of cars coming from far away. This street was once the hottest place in the city. There were small shops on both sides, including buns, shoe repairs, and old-fashioned hair salons. There were always colorful columns hanging at the door. But now, most of the stores are closed, and the remaining few who are still lit up are just reluctant to hold them. The small late-night cafeteria at the end of the street was still open, with a dim yellow light hanging at the door, and the two words "fishing sole" were written, and the words were faded. Lin Ye stood in the kitchen in the cafeteria, holding a kitchen knife in his hand, and the blade was knocking on the cutting board. He was cutting the pills, and his movements were as fast as if he was performing. The pills fell on the board in small pieces, emitting a fresh and spicy flavor. He is almost 30 this year, and he is quite ordinary, with a little tiredness on his face, and there are a few fine lines at the corners of his eyes, as if he had been stuck up late. But as soon as he entered the kitchen, his eyes changed, and he was focused on something big. This late-night canteen was handed down by his family. I heard that he started to fuck him since he was too much. He specialized in business from midnight to early morning, filling the stomachs of those who were still waving outside at night. When Lin Ye was a child, he liked to hear stories about the old customers. What was the lost young man crying and asking for a bowl of hot soup noodles? What was the driver who worked overtime until dawn who ordered a plate of fried rice, and insisted on adding more eggs? In general, what you cook is not a dish, but a human touch. Unfortunately, you left a few years ago, and the business of the canteen was getting worse day by day. Most of the people who can come here now are old customers. "Brother Ye, what else do you have to eat today?" A familiar sound came from the door, breaking the tranquility of the kitchen. Lin Ye looked up and saw that it was Xiaoya. She was wearing an ordinary white shirt and denim pants, and her hair was tied into a horsetail, looking a little haggard. Xiaoya is a single mother. She works as a clerk in the company during the day and also has to work part-time at night, so she is so busy that she is not touching the ground. Every time she finishes overtime, she will come here to order a bowl of hot soup noodles, saying that she can enjoy a bite after eating. "Old thing, you can choose soup noodles or fried noodles." Lin Ye replied with a smile, and kept cutting the stew in his hand. "Only soup noodles, it's hot and warms your stomach." Xiaoya sat down in a chair, and threw the bag beside her. She looked around for a while and sighed. "Brother Ye, why is this place still so deserted? You said your handwriting is so good, why don't you promote it?" Lin Ye slapped his head and sprinkled the chopped tart flowers into the pot. "As soon as the oil heats up, the fragrance will drop out." "What are you promoting?" "This place is supported by old customers. The people who come here have a quiet and familiar taste. It really makes people come, but it doesn't look like it." Xiaoya curled her lips and said nothing more. She lowered her head and played with her cell phone, occasionally looking up at Lin Ye's busy work. After a while, a bowl of hot soup noodles served. The noodles were chewy and the soup was clear. There was a poached egg lying on it, which was clear and clear, making people's appetite look. "Thank you, Brother Ye." Xiaoya took the bowl, picked up the chopsticks, and the noodles slid into her mouth. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, as if her whole body was exhausted by this hot soup. It's still a taste that doesn't taste good when you eat it until you're big. Lin Ye smiled and didn't answer. He leaned against the bar, wiped his hands, and watched Xiaoya eat noodles one by one, and there was a stubborn stance in his heart. Although the business is not good, he feels that this job is not in vain when he can make people show such an expression after eating. However, this calmness doesn't last long. The wind at the door was reeling again, and this time it came with an incognito face. The visitor was wearing a straight suit, his hair was meticulously combed, and he was holding a briefcase in his hand, which looked incompatible with the atmosphere of the old street. He glanced at the store, with a bit of scrutiny in his eyes, and then walked straight to the bar. "Hello, I'm Zhang Hao, the manager of the Star Catering Group." He passed a business card. His language was quite polite, but he always felt arrogant. "I heard that this old street is going to be replanned. Our company is interested in purchasing this land and want to talk to you about cooperation. Lin Ye took the business card and glanced at it. His face had not changed much. He put his business card into his skirt pocket at his hand and said lightly, "Sorry, I won't sell it here. It's meaningless to sell it after the ancestors." Zhang Hao was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect to be rejected so directly. He smiled, sat down, and continued, "Mr. Lin, I know this store has special meaning for you, but the development of the old street is a trend for big things. Your business is not good, so what's the point of keeping it? The prices we give are very fair, so you can switch to a better place to start over." Lin Ye didn't say anything, and he lowered his head and wiped the pavilion, as if he hadn't heard it. Zhang Hao saw that he ignored him and was not worried. He got up and prepared to leave. Before leaving, he left a sentence, "You think about it again, I will come here a few days later." After closing the door, Xiaoya raised her head, pointed her eyebrows and said, "Brother Yi, who is this person? Why is it so uncomfortable to hear? What does it mean to keep it? How many people are recalling this place? What does he know? It's okay, just say it." Lin Ye slammed his hands. His temperament was still calm, but his heart was actually a little congested. He knew that the old street had been communicating about demolition for the past few years, and he heard what kind of business complex to build. But this canteen was his hard work. After selling the land, where can I find the taste? Besides, he always felt that there was a little meaning in this place, and he couldn't speak clearly, but he just couldn't let it go. The night became deeper and deeper, and the store was calmer again. After Xiaoya finished the noodles, she paid the money. Before leaving, she told Lin Ye not to be too tired, and then wrapped her coat and disappeared at the entrance of the alley. Lin Ye began to clean up the table and just took the bowls and chopsticks into the kitchen. The wind at the door was sensation again. He thought to himself who could be there in the middle of the night, but he raised his head and was stunned. The one who came in was an old man wearing a gray tang suit, with gray hair, and a crutch. His face was covered with patterns, but his eyes were particularly bright. He walked in slowly, sat in the seat by the window, raised his head and smiled. "Xiaoya, are you busy?" Lin Ye heard the sound and his brain buzzed. This sound is too familiar. He is Chen Laozi, an old friend of Yui during his lifetime, and a guest in this canteen. When he was a child, Lin Ye didn't hear any less stories about Chen Laozi's story. The old streets were so popular that year, and the interesting stories about his youth. Chen Laozi was all clear about Chen Laozi. But the problem is that Mr. Chen passed away a few years ago. Chen. Lin Ye's voice was trembling a little, and he stood there without daring to move. He rubbed his eyes and made sure he didn't see anything wrong. The person in front of him was indeed like Chen Laozi, and even his expression was exactly the same when he smiled. "Don't be nervous, I'm just passing by, come and see you." Old Chen smiled and slammed his hand, his voice still so harmonious. He took out a broken notebook from it, the cover was so furry that it was worn, and put it on the table and pushed it in front of Lin Ye. "This thing is left by you. There are some traces of old food in it. Take it and take a look. I may find something you can get back." Lin Ye took the notebook and his hands were shaking a little. He looked through and saw that there were all handwritten characters, which were indeed his pencils, remembering some cooking methods and some fragmentary notes, such as his experiences written by hand. But when I turned to the last few pages, the content was broken, as if something was missing. "Chen, this." Lin Ye raised his head and thought to ask clearly, but was stunned. The seat was empty. Chen Laozi didn't know when he would miss it, and he was the only one left in the store. He looked down at the notebook in his hand, his heart beating a little fast, and he felt that everything was like a dream. He sat behind the bar and flipped through the notebook. Most of the dishes he recorded were his best, such as how to boil the soup and savor it, and it was written in detail. But in the end, the few pages were empty, as if they were deliberately leaving blank space, waiting for someone to fill it out. Lin Ye remembered a sentence that he often said during his lifetime: "The taste of our house is not just the dish, but the intention. You must understand the last dish yourself." He held the notebook and suddenly felt indescribable in his heart. In the past few years, the canteen business has been bad, and he also wanted to give up, but now holding this thing, he feels that he can't just let it go. Perhaps, retrieving the lost taste is not only for business, but also for the completion of things that I have not done. The night became even more dense, and the lights on the old street were dim. Lin Ye packed the notebook and began to prepare tomorrow's ingredients. There was a thought in his mind that became clearer and clearer. No matter whether the old street would be demolished or not, no matter how many times Zhang Hao came to help others, he had to keep this place in the smell. He didn't know what challenges he would have next, but at least now, he wanted to try it. A chick of fish was already white, and the cold wind in the early morning came in from the door, bringing a little moisture. Lin Ye stood in the kitchen, and the water in the pot began to bubble and came over the hot water. He picked up a small handful of noodles and slapped into the pots, watching them rolling in the water, and his heart was inexplicably calmed down. Maybe this is what he should do, using bowls of hot noodles to keep some. Nowhere far away, at the entrance of the alley in the old street, a black car was driving over. The window was half open, and Zhang Hao was sitting in the back seat, holding his cell phone in his hand, talking to someone. He said something in a low voice, his eyes swept over the dimly yellow light on the street, and a meaningful smile came out from the corner of his mouth. The morning light just entered the old street, and the joy of last night was still left in the alley. Lin Ye was standing in the kitchen in the late-night cafeteria. The water in the pot just turned off and the steam was still scattering. He almost didn't sleep last night, his brain was full of the words in the old notebook, and the familiar and unfamiliar face of Mr. Chen. He rubbed his son's vagina, sucked his breath, took out his pencil from his skirt pocket, and turned it over again. He mostly remembered the details of the food courts that he had been studying as a chef since he was a child, but the gaps in the end were like a puzzle that could not be solved, which made him feel a little confused. "Brother Yi, it's morning." The wind at the door was heard, and Xiaoya's voice followed. She was wearing more energetic today than usual. She wore a white shirt with a blue jacket and a warm cup in her hand. She should have just sent the child to the kindergarten. As soon as she entered the door, she pulled out the chair and sat down, and smiled. "How did you sleep last night? I saw that your eyes were dark, so staying up late again, right?" Lin Ye smiled, without answering directly, put the notebook back in his pocket, turned around and poured her a cup of hot tea. "I had something happen last night, so I didn't go to bed. Why did you come so early and don't work overtime today?" "I'll take a break today, so I can take a breath." Xiaoya took the tea, took a sip, and the heat spread on her face, making her look a little relaxed. "By the way, did the soup man come again last night? I always think he has no good intentions. How many people are thinking about this place in the old street?" "I haven't come, but I guess I can't come for a few days." Lin Ye leaned against the bar, rubbing a bowl in his hand. His language was calm, but his eyebrows were slightly snaking. He knew that Zhang Hao would not give up easily. He heard the civility yesterday, but actually was trying to find out his bottom line. For those who do business, this area in the old street is just a piece of fat. Who doesn't want to take a bite? Xiaoya curled her lips, as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she still didn't speak. She lowered her head and drank tea. The shop calmed down for a while, with only the birds occasionally yelling outside the window. Lin Ye's brain recounted what happened last night. Although the appearance of Chen Laozi is like a dream, the notebook was a real thing. He had a thought in his mind, thinking that he had to start doing something, and could not just stay at this small shop and wait for others to tear it down. "Sister Ye, do you still remember the dishes I made before?" Lin Ye suddenly opened his mouth and broke the silence. He put down the bowl and looked at Xiaoya with serious eyes. "It's the one with special flavor of old streets, such as red meat with dried plums, and the bone soup that has been boiled for several hours." Xiaoya was stunned for a moment, as if she was being reminded of something, and said in a few minutes, "Why don't you remember? When I was a child, I loved eating the dried plum vegetables and red meat you made the most. It was fat but not so delicious. I could eat 3 big bowls with rice. The soup was also very bad. I took a sip and warmed my whole body from my head to my feet. Unfortunately, you left later and I never ate these flavors again. Lin Ye heard it and his heart moved. He took out his notebook from his pocket, turned to one of the pages, pointed to the words on it and said, "This is what I left behind. I have recorded some old dishes. I want to try to make them back. If you are fine, what will it do to help me with the taste?" Xiaoya's eyes lit up and she pointed, "Okay. What's wrong with this? I'm just sitting there. I'll eat whatever you do. Keep it for you to pick the faults until you accept it," she said and patted her chest, as if it was a food reviewer, which made Lin Ye couldn't help laughing. In the next few hours, the two of them started working in the small shop. According to the records in the notebook, Lin Ye picked a few ingredients and began to try making dried plums, red meat. He first cut the pork belly into small pieces, heated oil in the pot, fried the meat under the pot and made two sides golden yellow, and the aroma filled the entire kitchen. Xiaoya, beside her, swallowed her saliva and kept talking, "Brother Yi, it would be a pity that you don't open a big hotel if you don't open this artwork. You will know it's delicious. Don't worry, let's talk about it when it's done." Lin Ye smiled and slanted his head, soaked the dried plums and chopped them, and added them to the pot and boiled them together. He remembered that when he made this dish, he would always add a little rice wine to remove the fishy smell. Although there was no rice wine, he tried to use a little cooking wine instead. The fire turned on and slowly stirred up, so that the taste would slightly pour into the meat. When the dishes were served, it was already noon. Xiaoya had been unable to wait long ago, and she slapped her chopsticks, took a bite, her eyes narrowed, and her face filled with enjoyment. "Well, although this taste is a little different from yours, it is already very close. The meat is fragrant again, and the aroma of dried plum vegetables has just neutralized the oily flavor. It's absolutely..." Lin Ye felt relieved when she heard her review, but he also knew that he was far behind. When he cooks this dish, he always wants to make another bowl after eating. The feeling is not something that can be achieved by the ingredients and heat alone. He lowered his head and turned around the notebook and muttered, "What's the difference? I always feel that I'm not interested." Xiaoya looked at him as he thought it was true and couldn't help but say, "Brother Yi, don't be too serious. You cooked at that time, maybe because the people on the street were packed in their hearts, and every bite they made was to make people happy. If you could find that feeling, the taste would naturally be the same." Lin Ye heard it, thinking about the point. He knew in his heart that Xiaoya had a reasonable point of view. He often said that cooking is not just a technology, but also an emotion. But how did he find this emotion back? He is really in a state of no sign. However, this first step was finally gone. He planned to try to make all the dishes in the notebook in the next few days, saying that he might be able to touch the door. In the next few days, the late-night cafeteria became a little hotter than usual. Lin Ye picks 1 or 2 dishes from the notebook every day to try it. When the store is open in the evening, he will take it out to the old customers and listen to their opinions. Xiaoya reports that he has become his chief trial diner almost every day, and has brought in acquaintances from the old streets. Everyone eats food and talks about past events, and the atmosphere in the store becomes warmer. One night, an old customer finished a bowl of paste made by Lin Ye and wiped his mouth and said, "Xiaoya, the taste of this noodles is really good. It looks like what you made that year. I remember that at that time, after work overtime, I came here to eat a bowl, and the whole person was alive. If you can get all these old flavors back, everyone in our old street will come back to support the venue." Lin Ye heard it and felt very excited, but he also knew that although these dishes were close to the past, they always felt that the heat was still close, especially the blank part of the notebook, which seemed like a tumbling that could not be solved, which made him feel a little breathless. At this moment, the wind at the door was sensation again. Zhang Hao came in. This time he was not wearing a suit, he was wearing a casual jacket, and holding a piece of documents in his hand, which looked a little more than last time. He glanced at the store and saw a few customers eating. He smiled and walked over and said, "Mr. Lin, the business looks good lately. I thought you have been so deserted." Lin Ye didn't answer him, so he lowered his head and said lightly, if you have anything to do, just say it, I'm so busy. Zhang Hao was not worried either. He pulled open the chair and sat down, took out a contract from the document folder, and pushed it in front of Lin Ye. This is our company's latest purchase plan. The price is 2% higher than last time, and it also includes a bonus to help you switch to a local store. I think this condition is quite honest. Do you consider it? Lin Ye glanced at the contract and didn't reach out to take it. His language was still so calm. I said that it's not sold here. No matter how high your price is, it's useless. The smile on Zhang Hao's face froze for a moment, but soon recovered. He leaned on the back of the chair, with a tinge in his language. Mr. Lin, I know you have feelings for this place, but in the business field, feelings are not worth a lot of money. The old street has to be demolished long ago, so what's the point of keeping it? Why don't you take the money and leave with a good deal? As soon as this happened, several customers in the store raised their heads, and their faces were not very good-looking. Xiaoya sat far away and sneered, Sir, don't say it too much. Brother Ye's store is a memory of how many people in the old street. You want to tear it down if you say it's not worth it. When these people don't exist. Zhang Hao glanced at Xiaoya, ignored her, and continued to look at Lin Ye and said, I will give you 3 more days to consider, and I will come in 3 days. If you are still in this situation, don't blame us for going through the formal procedures. After speaking, he got up and left, leaving a piece of paper on the table, and when the door was closed, the wind was particularly harsh. After the store was quiet for a while, Xiaoya slapped the table with anger and said, Why don't you look like this person? Brother Yi, don't be fooled by him. Everyone in our old street supports you. Lin Ye didn't say anything, and threw it into the slug after taking the document. His heart was not as calm as it was on the surface. He knew that Zhang Hao was not talking casually this time, and he probably had already started to move behind him. It is no small matter to fight against the land in the old street. How long can he last if he keeps this small shop alone? That night, the customers in the store were almost gone, and Lin Ye sat alone behind the bar, flipping through the notebook and staring blankly. The night came in through the window, and the dim yellow light reflected on his face, making him look a little lonely. At this moment, a light sound came from the door. He looked up and felt a shock in his heart. Chen Laozi appeared again, still in the gray tang suit, walking in with a smile on his crutch. He sat in the seat by the window and waved to his hand. Xiaoya, why did you have such an expression? What's the problem? Lin Ye looked at him, his throat was still a little tight. He knew that this might be his own illusion, but he still couldn't help asking, Chen, someone came to force me to sell the store. I don't know what to do. This place is my hard work, but how can I keep it alone? Chen Laozi heard it and smiled and slammed his head, but his voice was still so gentle. Whether you can hold on or not depends on you alone, but whether you have that feeling in your heart. You encountered this kind of thing that year, but he never wanted to give up. Every dish he cooked was telling others, the taste of this old street is worth it. Lin Ye heard it, and his heart seemed to be touched by something. He looked down at the notebook and murmured, but I haven't found the last dish yet. I always think what's missing. Chen Laozi didn't answer directly, but stood up and patted Lin Ye on the shoulder. The smell is in the heart, not on the paper. You can hear more about what the people here say, think more about why they came, or maybe you will understand. After speaking, he turned around and walked towards the door. His figure gradually became blurred, as if it had melted into the night. Lin Ye sat in the same place, recalling Chen Laozi's words in his brain. He suddenly realized that maybe he had been too focused on the food recipes these days and forgot the emotions behind the cooking. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, picked up a piece of pork belly, and decided to try another red pork with dried plums. This time, he did not do it completely according to the notebook, but instead recalled the scene when he was a child when he was cooking, and the expressions of the old customers. The meat in the pot is slowly boiling, and the fragrance fills the shop again. Lin Ye served a small bowl and drank it. The taste was closer than before, as if there was a layer of warmth that could not be described. He suddenly had an idea in his mind, or maybe Chen Laozi said it correctly, the taste was not on the paper, but in the stories of those who came here. In the next few days, Lin Ye began to talk to customers more seriously about their stories. Some people talk about the scene of having a meal with their father when they were young, and some people mention the comfort of a bowl of hot soup noodles when they were in trouble. These stories are like spelling pictures, filling the gaps in Lin Ye's a little bit, and also giving the dishes he cooked a little more different flavor. At the same time, Zhang Hao's threat is getting closer and closer. Lin Ye heard that several other stores in the old street had been convinced and had prepared to sign a contract, and the pressure was pressed on him like a mountain. He knew that once the 3-day deadline arrived, Zhang Hao would definitely come again, and might even take action directly. But he became more and more clear in his heart that no matter how difficult it was, he had to keep this place. That night, after the customers in the store dispersed, Lin Ye was about to close the door, and the wind at the door was sensation again. He thought it was Zhang Hao who came early, but he raised his head and was stunned. What came in was a strange middle-aged man, dressed in a simple manner and carrying a little bit of mulberry on his face. After he sat down, he ordered a bowl of the simplest bowl of yangchun noodles, and then said in a low voice, "Little brother, is it true that the taste of this shop can bring back the memory?" Lin Ye looked at him, clicked his head, turned around to go to the kitchen to work. He suddenly felt a premonition in his heart that this personal story might help him closer to the secret of the last dish. Lin Ye stood in the kitchen, holding a small handful of sausage in his hand, scattering it into the pot, and the hot oil swallowed sounded, and the fragrance spread out instantly. He glanced at the middle-aged man on the side of the cage, looking down at the phone, with a little tiredness on his face, as if he had just experienced something. Lin Ye felt indescribable. Although the yangchun noodles he ordered were simple, there was a story in his eyes, which might help him get closer to the secret of the last dish left by you. "Brother, the noodles are ready." Lin Ye walked to the bar with a bowl of hot yangchun noodles and put them down lightly. There are a few tangerine flowers sprinkled on the top of the noodles, the soup is clear and there is a faint smell of pig oil. The middle-aged man raised his head, urged him to click, took the chopsticks, slowly picked up a small mouthful of noodles, blew the heat, and sent it into his mouth. "This taste." The man took a bite, stopped the chopsticks, and a burst of shock came across his eyes, as if he had been reminded of some recollection. He lowered his head and took another bite, then raised his head and looked at Lin Ye, with a little sad voice, "Why are your noodles exactly the same as what I had when I was a child? At that time, my father often brought me to the old street for a meal, and ordered a bowl of yangchun noodles at all, which was simple but awesome." Lin Ye heard it, and moved his heart and leaned on the bar and asked, "Do your dad come here often? Then you should know me. He opened this store and I will later pass it on to me." The man clicked his head and put down his chopsticks, as if he was trapped in his memory. "I know, why don't you? That person is very realistic. The dishes you cook are not fancy, but they can make people remember it after eating. My dad was a taxi driver that year. He ran until midnight at night. He was so hungry that he came here to eat a bowl of noodles. After drinking the soup, he felt like he was charged. He always said that the taste of this place was not just filling his stomach, but heartwarming." Lin Ye heard these words and held the corner of his skirt involuntarily. He appeared in his brain, and the old customers were satisfied after eating. He suddenly felt that Chen Laozi said it correctly, the taste was not on the paper, but in the stories and memories of these people. He asked in a low voice, "Then why didn't your dad come again?" The man sighed and smiled bitterly. "He left a few years ago, and he was in a bad mood and walked very suddenly. Later, I moved to another place, busy with work, and didn't have time to go back to the old street. Today, when I passed by, the listener said that the store was still open, so I came in to take a look. I didn't expect that I could really taste this taste," he said, with a warmth in his eyes, and he lowered his head and continued to eat noodles, as if he was tasting a feeling of long-term disgust. Lin Ye didn't say anything anymore, turned back to the kitchen, and there seemed to be a light in his brain. He remembered the stories he talked to customers these days. Everyone said that when this restaurant, there was light in his eyes. Whether it was Xiaoya's red meat when she was young, or the uncle's stewed oil noodles after working overtime, behind these tastes were all emotional connections. He suddenly realized that the last dish left by Yui was not a specific food dish, but a feeling that could evoke reminiscence and heal the mind. The night became increasingly heavy, and there were only a few dim road lights left in the alleys of the old street. After the man finished eating the noodles, he paid the money. Before leaving, he smiled at Lin Ye. "Thank you, brother. This bowl of noodles reminds me of a lot of things. I hope your store can keep opening and don't let this taste disappear." Lin Ye was at the beginning, and he seemed to have made up some determination in his heart. After he sent the man away, he returned to the back of the bar, took out the old notebook, turned to the blank space on the last few pages, picked up a pen, and began to write the story I heard today. He wrote very slowly, and every sentence seemed to be talking to him, remembering the meaning behind this bowl of Yangchun noodles, and the expressions on the faces of the customers. In the next few days, Lin Ye seemed to have changed. He no longer blindly pursues the taste of food, but listens more carefully to the stories of people coming to the store. He began to try to incorporate these stories into the cooking, such as the soup made for Xiaoya. He would deliberately add a small spoonful of spicy oil that he had made for his home, because she liked the slight stimulation. He would beat an extra egg for the fried dough made for the overtime uncle because he always said that more eggs can make more energy. Although each dish is still the same, the customer's expressions after eating are more satisfying than before. However, the 3-day deadline given by Zhang Hao still arrived as scheduled. That night, the last group of customers were sent away in the store, and the risk at the door was over. Zhang Hao walked in. This time he was wearing a black suit, with no expression on his face, and there was also a bunch of documents following 2 assistants behind him. He walked directly to the bar and threw a contract in front of Lin Ye, and said in a cold manner, "Mr. Lin, 3 days have arrived. I hope you can give me a happy conversation, sign or not." Lin Ye glanced down at the contract, and leaned against the bar. His temperament was still so calm. "I said that this place is not sold. If you really have the ability, just go through your program and don't waste time this time." Zhang Hao's face darkened, and his eyes were filled with impatience. He sneered and said, "Mr. Lin, don't toast or eat wine. The old street has already planned the site, not something you can hold on to. You have signed it now, and you can still leave with some money, otherwise you will be demolished by then and you will not be left." As soon as this came out, the atmosphere in the store suddenly became tight. Xiaoya happened to clean up the table next to her. When she heard this, she was so angry that she slapped the table. "Why are you so afraid of your face? This shop is the hard work of Brother Yi and the recollection of our old street. Do you think about it if you break it up? What are these people all in air?" Zhang Hao glanced at Xiaoya, ignored her, and continued to look at Lin Ye and said, "I'll ask once in the end, do you sign or not?" Lin Ye didn't say anything, his eyes were unusually calm. He suddenly turned around, took out a small plate of dried plum dishes and red meat from the kitchen, put it in front of Zhang Hao, and said lightly, "Didn't you say the taste of this place is worth a few dollars? Then you can cook this dish first and then talk." Zhang Hao was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect Lin Ye to come this time. He looked down at the plate of red meat. The pieces were shiny, and the fragrant aroma of dried plums came over his nose, and the sales were quite good. He hesitated for a moment, picked up the chopsticks, put a small piece into his mouth. The meat melts in his mouth, and it is fat but not soft. The taste of dried plums neutralizes the oily feeling and there is a kind of indescribable warmth that makes him stop chopsticks and his expression changes on his face. "This." Zhang Hao put down his chopsticks and was silent for a while, as if he was touched by something. He said in a low voice, "Why is this taste so cooked? When I was a child, I seem to have eaten something similar." Lin Ye looked at him, his language was calm but powerful. "This is the smell I passed down. How many people have found comfort here and left memorials? You said it is not worth the money, but to these people, it is worth more than anything else. If you want to tear down the old street, I can't hold it, but I will never sell this store even if I die." Zhang Hao heard it, his face was complicated, as if he had fallen into some kind of thorn. The 2 assistants behind him looked at each other and did not dare to say a word. After a long time, Zhang Hao opened his mouth and his voice became lowered. "Mr. Lin, I admit that this taste is indeed good. But business is business, and feelings are nothing to eat. I will give you the last chance to answer me before noon tomorrow." After saying that, he left with someone, and when the door was closed, the sound of Feng Xiao sounded particularly harsh. Xiaoya was so angry that she stomped her feet and turned to Lin Ye. "Brother Yi, why is this person so hard? Don't be shocked by him. Everyone in our old street supports you." Lin Ye smiled, saying nothing, lowered his head and tidied up the table. It was clear in my heart that Zhang Hao was not just talking casually this time. He probably had a bigger move at noon tomorrow. He knew that he was too weak to guard this small shop alone, but he also understood that he had to try it no matter what. That night, Lin Ye was not sleeping, and sat behind the bar, flipping through the notebook and staring blankly. The night came in through the window, and the dim yellow light reflected on his face, making him look a little lonely. At this moment, a light sound came from the door. He looked up and felt a shock in his heart. Chen Laozi appeared again, still in the gray tang suit, with a crutch, walking in with a smile and sitting in the seat by the window. "Xiaoya, why did you have this expression? What trouble did you encounter again?" Chen Laozi's voice was still so gentle, as if he could see through Lin Yexin's thrust. Lin Ye's throat was a little nervous and said in a low voice, "Chen, someone came to force me to sell the store, saying that the contract would be demolished tomorrow at noon. I knew I couldn't hold it, but I didn't want to give up. This place was my hard work and the memory of the old street." Chen Laozi smiled and slapped Lin Ye's shoulder. "It's not about you who can hold on to it, but whether you have that sadness in your heart. You encountered this kind of thing that year, but he never wanted to give up. Every dish he cooked was telling others, the taste of this old street is worth it. If you understand this, you will know what to do." Lin Ye heard it, and his heart seemed to be awakened by something. He looked down at the notebook and murmured, "I seem to understand a little. The last dish is not a food dish, but a thought, right?" Chen Laozi didn't answer directly, but just smiled. His figure gradually became blurry, as if it had melted into the night. Lin Ye sat in the same place, and suddenly the Qingming festival rose in his brain. He finally realized that the last dish left by Wei was not a specific recipe, but a dish that carried emotions and cured people's hearts. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, and decided what to do. The next morning, Lin Ye opened the store early and started working hard. Instead of preparing a few simple dishes as usual, he took out all the old flavors recorded in the notebook and made them one by one, from dried plums, red meat, and noodles with oil, to the simplest bowl of yangchun noodles. Each dish was so thoughtful. He also specially contacted Xiaoya and other old customers to let them spread the news, saying that at noon this night, the cafeteria will hold a special taste return banquet late at night, and please come and taste the taste of the old street. The news was spread very quickly. At noon, the store was full of people, including old residents in the old street, former customers, and even curious passers-by. Everyone surrounded the table, ate the dishes made by Lin Ye, talked about the past, and laughter and heat mixed together, making this small shop extremely popular. Xiaoya was busy serving the dishes, and she didn't forget to talk. "Brother Yi, what's wrong with you? What a sudden big fight. I see that you have no problem opening a big hotel." Lin Ye smiled, saying nothing, just busy with his head down. He knew in his heart that this reply banquet was not only to let everyone eat, but also to tell everyone that the taste and memory of this place is worthy of protection. At this moment, Zhang Hao appeared at the entrance of the alley with several people. He looked at the crowd at the entrance of the store and his face was not very good-looking, and he obviously didn't expect Lin Ye to come here. He walked into the store, overwhelmed the crowd, and came to the bar and said coldly, "Mr. Lin, what are you doing this? I thought you could change the result by getting some people. I brought the contract, and it is still time to sign it." Lin Ye looked at him up and did not rush to reply. Instead, he brought out a bowl of just-made yangchun noodles from the kitchen and put them in front of Zhang Hao, and said lightly, "Mr. Zhang, don't rush to talk about the contract first. I'll give this bowl of noodles. This is the taste of the old street and the thought left by my heart. You can say it after you eat it." Zhang Hao stared at his eyebrows, as if he wanted to refuse, but as he looked around him with his eyes staring at him, he still took the chopsticks and took a bite. At the entrance of the noodles, the warmth of the soup instantly dispelled the coldness in his heart, as if it had evoked some long-standing memory. When he was a child, he had eaten such noodles in the old street. At that time, his father was still there. Although life was hard, there was always a simple happiness. As he ate, his eyes changed, as if he was touched by something, and his chopsticks stopped in the air. The person in the store looked at him and someone said, "Mr. Zhang, how does this taste like this? This place is not the land, but the home. You are a businessman, making money is a skill, but don't tear off our memories." Zhang Hao was silent. After a long time, he put down his chopsticks and said in a low voice, "This taste is really different." He looked up at Lin Ye, with a little more hesitation in his eyes. "Mr. Lin, I admit that your place has its value. But behind me is the company, and planning is not something I can decide alone." Lin Ye clicked the head, and his language was still calm. "I know you have your difficulties, but I also hope you can understand what this place means to us. Whether to remove it or not is not something I can hold on, but I will keep it until the last moment." Zhang Hao didn't say anything else, and left with someone, leaving a sentence before leaving, "I will discuss with the company and give you an answer." His back disappeared from the entrance of the alley, and the people in the store burst into a sound of their palms. Someone patted Lin Ye's shoulder and said, "Brother Ye, you're fucking beautifully. No matter what, we will support you." Lin Ye smiled, not completely relaxed. He knew that this battle was not over yet. Although Zhang Hao was touched, the interests behind the company were not solved by a bowl of noodles. However, he also understood that no matter what the result was, he had to keep it, because this was not only his store, but also the memory of the old street, and the intention left by Yulai. The night fell again, and the lights on the old street were dim. Lin Ye stood at the entrance of the store, looking at the often-used figures coming from the alley, and felt more at ease in his heart. The tables in the store have been cleaned up, and most of the customers have dispersed, leaving only Xiaoya who is helping to wipe the table. She raised her head and smiled at Lin Ye. "Brother Ye, this incident is pretty today. No matter what, it's always memorable for us to smell." Lin Ye clicked his head. Nothing was said, just lowered his head and looked at the notebook in his hand, with a more determined look in his eyes. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but as long as the smell was still there and as long as people could find warmth, he would be willing to keep going. The night wind blew over, and the lights at the door swayed slightly, and the words "fishing soul" were particularly warm in the dim light.